Hi everybody, welcome to Bello's. My name is Catherine and today I'm going to show you how I created this card using embossing powders and ink refills in what is called a floating ink technique. I am not the creator of this technique, but I thought it would be a really fun way to use your new Lavinia reinkers when they arrive. I don't have my reinkers yet, however, I will be using my Lisa Horton inks reinkers to show you what you can do with yours, either using your Lavinia reinkers when they arrive or your Lisa Horton ink refills. Let's talk about the supplies we need to get started. Here are the supplies we'll use for today's card. I have the Christmas Sentiments collection from Cardio, the Poinsettia stamp set in the A6 size from Sweet Poppy, a piece of 7x7 hot press watercolor cardstock. You're going to want watercolor cardstock to recreate this technique because we're going to use lots of water on our card. I have a piece of 7.5 by 7.5 jade colored cardstock because it coordinates really well with the inks that I chose to use. Now, if I was using my Lavinia inks, I might go with more of an olive colored background, but this works really well with the colors that I have today. And then I have an 8x8 card base. For inks, we'll be using the Cloud 9 Rhubarb Jam. Again, if I was doing this with elements, I probably would choose the confetti. I'm going to be using VersaFine Clair and Nocturne to stamp the inside of my card, and Versamark for my embossing techniques. The inks that I'm using today, and I will also tell you which ones I would use if I had the Lavinia ones in hand, but they're on their way. I'm using Margarita, and with Lavinia, I probably would use the Lime Punch. I have Strawberry Sundae. And again, for reds, I probably would go with Confetti and Emperor Red. But today I'll be using Strawberry Sundae and Dusky Rose. And as I get into mixing up the ink colors, there was one that I used, I think it was the Shocking Pink, but I ended up not using that in my project, so I'm not listing it. I also used the Rhubarb Jam and Loganberry. And for greens, we'll be using, well, the Garden Sage and the Margarita. So for elements, I would do the Lime Punch and the Olive Green. And then again, the Emperor Red and the Confetti for the reds. Okay, we'll also be using the Mica Minerals in Regal Red, white embossing powder. I have Liquid Pearls in Marigold. And then, of course, my embossing buddy. I have a spray bottle. You're going to want a spray bottle and some water on hand. I have a couple of paint palettes to mix up my inks. And then I'll be using my fan brush. I have a little tool that I like to use for different things. And then you'll want a watercolor blending brush. Let's pull it all together and get started. Now that I have my inks ready to go, I'm going to come back in with my embossing pillow and just take away any static and hopefully fill in any any fine grains in my watercolor paper. What I want to do is come back with my Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp 3 poinsettias, and I want them to frame the top and down the left of my card. I'm going to do them one at a time because I really do want to make sure they don't overlap each other, since I'm not going to be using any masking techniques today. So I have one here. I'm going to do another one in this corner and then another one below. Here we go. So our background is embossed, and now we get to just really play and have fun with these reinkers. I think I'm going to try just squirting the back of my paper to see if I can help it stick and lay down, which I think will work better without some scrap paper underneath. And you just really want to get this paper wet, because we're going to let the ink float inside our embossed image, and it will settle and hopefully dry, and we're going to come back with a beautiful stained glass look. So I'm going to bring back my reinkers, and again, I'm using the Lisa Horton because I really wanted to get this out, and I knew people would want to see some different techniques using reinkers, because I just know in the coming weeks we're all going to have lots of fun with those. I'm going to start with the Garden Sage, or the darker of my green, and what I want to do is just come into my leaves, and all you need to do is just touch your brush to the inside of the image that you want to, where you want the color to go. Now, if I want to mix the colors a little bit, I can come back with a lighter green and just add it. You can help them blend if you want to, or just once you've got it all colored in, if you wanted to, you could come back in with a heat tool and help it dry and continue to move that ink a little bit on top of your paper. So as this dried, I noticed that because of the curve of the paper, some of my darker colors started to spread out towards the outside. So I'm going to actually use some more of the strawberry sundae, and I need to mix up a little bit more because I used a lot of it. And we're just going to add it to the center of our flowers. And you will obviously be very messy when you're finished with this project, but it's all good. It washes off. I want to add some water to it to make it a little watery, and just come back in and add that darker red to the center of each of my petals. This is pretty dry to the touch, so we're ready for our next step. Now we mixed up all of this ink that we haven't used yet, the rhubarb jam and the loganberry. So let's go ahead and take out our fan brush and add a little splatter, and I'm going to do that with the rhubarb jam. And I do feel like it needs a little bit of sparkle. So what I did was I pulled out my Regal Red Mica Minerals, and I'm going to mix that with the loganberry and add just a little bit there. Just add a little scoop of that in there. And a little bit of splatter using our fan brush. Now we'll have a little bit of sparkle as well. All right, let's let that dry. Okay, that's dry, and the shimmer of that mica inside of that red ink is stunning in person. The next thing I'm going to do, and we're almost finished, is stamp my greeting. So I decided to use the phrase from the Sweet Poppy stamp set that says Christmas greetings, and I'm going to stamp that with the rhubarb jam just to carry that deep color into my greeting. So this is something you want to do as a last step because it is a water-soluble ink and we don't want it to be smudged on our finished card. So I'm going to place it down in the corner. And there we go. All right, let's come back in with stickles and add some golden liquid pearls to the center of our flowers. So I decided that I'm going to use one of the verses from my Christmas Sentiments by Cardio, and I'll be using the one that reads From Our Front Door to Yours, and I'm going to put that on the inside of my card. So in order to stamp the greeting, I decided to use my VersaFine Clarin Nocturne, and then we're going to come back in and add one of the poinsettias to the inside of the card. So So I'm just going to get that inked up really well. Give it a nice press. And there we go. And now we have this really big poinsettia that we used on the front of our card. So I'm going to ink it up in the rhubarb jam because it matches the greeting that will be on the front. And I'll just make sure it's nice and inked. And I'm actually going to stamp it. Let's see, it's a pretty big card, so let's go ahead and stamp it down in the corner. You could also stamp it over the font if you wanted to. And as we're using the black, we'd probably still be able to read it through the stamp. But here we are. Now, if I was doing this card with Lavinia inks instead of the rhubarb jam, I believe I would probably go with the confetti. All right, so that's done. The inside's ready to go. Let's go ahead and assemble the card. So I'll be using my card topper, and then again, I have a piece of jade colored cardstock that is 7.5 by 7.5. And we'll just add our glue around the outside. Press it down in the middle. And then we have our card topper. Everything's dry, so it's perfect to assemble. And because the cardstock is a little bit warped, I'm going to make sure that I give it lots of glue, and then I'll probably let it dry underneath something heavy. So here we have it. Our card is complete. I want to thank you for joining me today. If you're not already a member of our Facebook groups, please consider joining us at Del Bello's Designs Lounge for all projects made using Lavinia stamps, or Del Bello's Designs a la carte for all projects made using other stamp lines Del Bello's sells. We love to see your projects and hope to see you there soon. Bye-bye.